If you can't envision it first, and for every vision you have, a provision has already been made, right? It as soon as you had the vision to get this BMW, it was already set into stone when it would come into your life experience. And there were probably trials and tribulations. There were also disciplines and decisions you had to make along the journey to arrive at the moment. But the moment was set in stone as soon as you decided. There's this Emerson quote that I really love. And the quote says, once you decide, all of the universe rearranges itself to bring you what it decided. Now, how long it takes for the universe to bring it to you is contingent upon you.
Welcome to the Break Free Podcast. I am your host, David Mancella. Today we have with us Dr. Darnyelle. Doctor, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, David. I'm excited to be here.
I'm super excited to be here with you too. After reviewing what you do, it's incredible because, for the audience, a little teaser, Dr. Darnyelle helps companies break the barrier of $1 million and beyond. So people that dedicate their life to do that deserves a lot of respect and a lot of help, because the more small business and medium-sized businesses grow in the free world, the better this place is going to be for everybody.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. Yep.
Doctor, can you please tell me your full name? Where do you live? And obviously, what do you do for a living? What's the name of your business?
Absolutely. I am Dr. Darnyelle Jervey Harmon. My name, Darnyelle, means the secret place where dreamers go to dream. I reside in the state of Delaware in the United States, and I pause for a second because I'm thinking of how to say this in the most impactful way. So my mission, my mantle, my mandate is to help entrepreneurs and small business owners generate millions of dollars a year in their business, ultimately so that they can have a business that serves them both financially and spiritually, and they can establish a financial legacy. I believe that entrepreneurship is the vehicle that God created to allow us to experience wealth. And so I do my part to help individuals who are talented, mission-driven, and have a heart of service for other people tap into the wealth that I believe that was already earmarked and ordained for them to experience.
It's beautiful. And the basis of the free world is entrepreneurship.
Yes.
Because if you think about it, free enterprise dictates that you shall do whatever you like to do as long as you are adding value to somebody else. And the reward that you get is correlated to the amount of value that you give to your community or you give to your potential clients.
Absolutely.
That's the free world. And the opposite is horrible. The opposite is a massive government telling everybody what to do in the most inefficient way. And we've seen it throughout the world, throughout history.
Yes.
And to your point, I know that is the God-given mandate to have entrepreneurship because we're based on freedom. And if you look at the 10 Commandments, it's implied there that we have the right of property. When you say do not steal, and do not wish your neighbor's your neighbor's property, is implying that you have the right to have property.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. Yep. I agree. I think, of course, everyone can't be an entrepreneur and have their own business. We need people who are willing to serve in our businesses on our behalf to help us to expand our reach without compromising what's most important to us. So we need people to help us do it. But for those of us who have the call to entrepreneurship, really being able to understand it and to leverage it to unlock that wealth, it's really important. And for those of us who know how to guide people on that journey, because entrepreneurship isn't easy, right? If it were easy, everybody would probably be doing it. It's incumbent upon those of us who have the skill sets to help, for us to be vocal and to be present to help make sure that as businesses are being founded, we defy the statistics that say within 5 years, more than 50% of businesses fail. So we have a very real responsibility to teach the insights and the acumen that is necessary to create businesses that are sustainable over time, that are making amounts of money that allows us to really be the change we want to see inside the world.
For sure. And the more as business succeed, everybody gets blessed, especially the direct employees. And Absolutely. To your point, you're right. I mean, I don't even think half of the percent of the world are entrepreneurs. Right. Because if you look at company, the entrepreneur is the founder, the CEO, and then you have massive people making that dream happen, right? Yes. So the entrepreneur is the visionary, is the executor of the vision, but then he or she needs the people that have the specific skill sets to accomplish that vision, to make that dream come true, and that's where employment comes from. Absolutely. Right? So, how long have you been doing this?
I have had my own business for almost 17 years. The first 3 years, I call them the lost years, because we were not doing anything really great. We were stumbling and falling and trying to figure out who we were going to be in the marketplace. But for the last 13 years, we have been working diligently to work with entrepreneurs and small business owners to get them to the $1 million mark.
That's beautiful. So you've been doing this for a long time now.
For a long time, more than a decade.
And that shows that you are very successful, right? Like to your point, in fact, the statistics before were that, within 2 years, most businesses go out of business, right? Yes. The businesses that make it to 10 years, they are called unicorns because they are
called unicorns. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yep.
So how do you landed this? So let's go back in time. Where were you on your last year of high school? And what was in your mind? What do you wanted to do with your life?
Oh, I love this question. My last year of high school, I was so ready to get out of my father's home. At that point in time, I was raised by my father. My mom went to jail when I was very young. And I was ready to take over the world. Like, I had visions of grandeur and world domination. And so I was going to college. I was blessed enough to get a full academic scholarship to the University of Delaware, which is what made college possible. I'm grateful that at that point in time in my life, I never even thought about student loans, and I didn't have to, right? I was able to go to school and get my undergraduate degree and even go on and get my master's degree completely at the expense of someone else, right? So grateful to be able to say that. When I first went to college, I knew that I was going to be an attorney. That was my mission. So my undergraduate degree is in English. I have a concentration in business and technical writing, but I was going to law school, and I knew that I was going to have to be very eloquent and poised in my communication style, and I was going to have to be a really dynamic writer and researcher. And so that's what I studied in school. It was 3 months into the end of my senior year when I changed my mind and decided not to go to law school, even though I had gotten into Georgetown Law, which was my dream at that point in time. But one day I literally just woke up and I felt that was no longer the call for me. I didn't know exactly what I was supposed to do. So at that point in time, I pivoted and I took a job in a financial services company, and I waited until I got clarity about what I was supposed to do with my life. And I know now that I'm an entrepreneur running my own company as a $1 million CEO, I know that I wasn't supposed to go to law school. That would have been a derailment, that would have distracted from my destiny. But at the time, I couldn't figure out how I was going to pay for law school. And because I didn't have the money and I didn't get enough scholarships, because again, I didn't even think about student loans, and I'm so grateful that I didn't, it just became not an option anymore. And so I went to work. I started working. Within 3 years in my job, I was a vice president in the company, which was really amazing.
3 years, wow.
Yeah, within 3 years. And then within 12 years, I was walking out the door to live the entrepreneurship dream, because I realized that I was not born to sit behind someone else's desk, that I'm a big baller shot caller, and that I am a visionary, and I am to lead. And it's just really hard to lead when someone else is calling the shots.
So it took you 12 years to figure that out in corporate, right?
It took me 12 years to be in position to be ready to leave. Like I was not going to just quit my job and not have enough resource available for me to live on while I figured it out. So when I left my job, I had enough liquid to be able to live for 2 good years, which, is unheard of. Most people don't do that. And so I also wanted what I loved about corporate America, and I would never change, is what I learned there. I learned a lot of skill sets that have transferred into my own company. I learned a lot of core values and how I lead and manage my own team that I wouldn't have learned if I never had the opportunity to be inside of a corporate infrastructure. And the company that I worked for was very customer focused. And so I learned amazing customer service and how to operate in excellence, all of things which are really important to our brand today and help us to stand out amongst the other business coaching and consulting companies that exist in the marketplace.
You are completely right. I believe people underestimate the need to go and get corporate experience to run their own businesses, even if you have the calling. Because I tell you one thing, like I remember at some point in my life, in my business life, so I run 7 multiple companies. All of them are self-managed. So I have the blessing of time. That's why I do this, just to bless the world with wisdom. But when I was growing in my corporate life, I started to let clients, $1 million or under $1 million clients, into the business, into my main company, which is Custom Software Solutions, just to realize what a horrible experience it was. Not for all of them, but for the majority of them, they didn't have any corporate training. They didn't know how to use even a calendar system. They didn't even know how to respect a meeting. Some basic job skills that you get taught in corporate.
Yeah.
So with that level of miscommunication, I couldn't. So I just gave a mandate to the sales team. You shall not entertain people. Like, we actually will research the entrepreneur. If this person didn't have corporate experience, we will not get them as a client.
Yeah.
Right? Because it was just a waste of time. And then because they didn't communicate properly, we couldn't deliver the products and services properly. And then it was on us. The responsibility was on us.
Absolutely. Right? That makes complete sense.
I had a similar path that you had. But for me, I thought when I graduated college, I could be a software consultant. And I failed miserably for the first 2 years. I almost went bankrupt, but I was blessed enough to sell the business to an investor. And then I went into corporate for 10 years until I figured it out. I figured out the business acumen, the discipline, the customer service, the adding value, the delivery part, managing people, right? That's where I learned how to be a good leader. Yeah. And then with all those skills, boom, I started in 2005. And for you were 3 lost years, for me were 5 lost years. Even with that training, I was miserable for 5 years until finally I broke through. Right? How was it for you? So when you quit, did you know already what you wanted to do as an entrepreneur?
No, I didn't. I had no clue. I just literally woke up December the 17th, 2004. That was the day I quit my job without a plan. And so I walked into my boss's office. I handed her a makeshift letter of resignation and I left. And while I was trying to figure out what I was supposed to do, I sold Mary Kay Cosmetics. I happened to be very good at it. I got a pink Cadillac. I earned the pink Cadillac 5 months after I walked away from my job. I ended up becoming #1 in my national area in the 463% growth in my state of Delaware to become a top sales director in my state. I did that for 2.5 years full time. And then it started to be revealed to me that I was to create my own company and that I was to teach. One of my gifts is my ability to take really complex concepts and break them down in a way that allows people to be able to take action from them. And not every teacher can do that. And so my ability to be able to do that is what led to starting my company. But I struggled massively at first. I didn't understand ground up business, right? I had worked in corporate America where I never did business development. And then I worked in Mary Kay Cosmetics, which was an established brand that I was articulating that other people had already heard of. And here I am coming to start my own business. No one ever heard of me and what it is that I do. And I heard crickets instead of cash registers. And so it didn't take very long for the cash that I left corporate with to run out and for the bottom to literally fall out of my business. I actually did file bankruptcy and I went back to work for 2 years. I humbled myself and I became an employee again. This time, however, I knew that it was for a specific period of time. And I knew that while I was there, I was going to learn what I needed to come back out and be successful in entrepreneurship. So January 1st, 2011 was my first day again, full-time in my business. And we have not looked back since. It took us approximately 3 years to become a 7-figure company ourselves. And then to start teaching other people how to be able to do the same thing.
What a beautiful journey, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't trade anything that
Right.
happened on my journey, David. Like, I believe all of it was absolutely necessary for me to be the woman that I am today, to be able to look in the eyes of entrepreneurs and small business owners that have these $1,000,000 business dreams, but don't have a clue how they're going to connect the dots to actually create a company that will generate that kind of money without them having to compromise and sacrifice everything that's important to them. So being able to have gone first and to lead in that area and to offer them the opportunity to learn from my proven framework has been absolutely amazing. And I wouldn't have the framework had I not experienced the adversity.
You know, I was hearing an expert saying that, this senior business owner was asked by a kid. He said, I have $100,000 to go to an MBA or to start my own company. What would you suggest I do? And then the business leader told him, spend the $100,000 on your first company, and if you go bankrupt, it's going to give you 10 times more lessons than an MBA. And that's what this
Absolutely.
kid did, and he became a multi-millionaire.
Absolutely.
Right?
I have an MBA, and I will tell you that my MBA did not help me one iota when I became an entrepreneur. And I think the programs have shifted some now, because I've had my MBA for more than 20 years. So I think now they have MBAs that are focused on entrepreneurship. But what I learned was how to exist in a corporate structure. So it was an MBA that would have served me very well had I stayed in corporate America. I might be, a director or senior executive vice president level by now if I had stayed. But as an entrepreneur, yeah, I would say the same thing. Bet on yourself if you're willing to show up fully and do the work, because it doesn't have to be hustle and grind hard, but there is work to do. There are difficult decisions to make. There is an embodiment, like you have to become the $1,000,000 CEO long before the money lands in your bank account. I say all the time, money is mental before it's material. And so all of those things that you learn on the journey are how you sustain the journey. So I would tell anyone who asked me that today the same exact thing.
Actually, I think everything is mental before it becomes material.
Oh, I agree.
Right? We have the God-given capacity of having our spiritual eyes. I call it our spiritual eyes. My imagination is my spiritual eyes. If I visualize something that I want, at first I ask the Lord whether is that for me or not, if it's for good or evil. And then when I get the green light, I pursue it in my mind first until it becomes real. Now, the way it gets real, it's weird because a lot of the times it's not even the way I thought, but it becomes real. I'll give you a clear example. Okay, this is gonna be funny to you. I immigrated from Guatemala when I was early 20s. I had a wife and a baby. When I was going through computer science school back home, there was a person that had a BMW convertible. It was red with a black top, and it was beautiful. And when we were dating with my wife, I was telling my wife, someday I'm going to have that car. And I kept that car in my mind. And we moved to Canada with $50. We went back to school here, and the car was in my mind. I started with a $800 car. This is back in 1992, 1993. So this little car for $800 drove me to college every single day for 4 or 5 years, right? And I had this dream, and I kept the car in my mind. And I remember the day that I went and bought it. It was in 2004. And the one that I got was black with a beautiful beige top. And the car was gorgeous. And I was telling my wife, you realize that this has been in my mind for over 15 years, but I finally got it. but I never lost the vision. I never lost the desire to get this vehicle. This is just a material possession that is meaningless to me now. But this is everything in life is exactly the same way. If you don't put it in your mind and you commit yourself to get it done, and if you ask the Lord that if it's your will, then you'll get it done.
Absolutely. I agree.
Right? Same with entrepreneurship and your goals, right?
Absolutely. Yep. Everything. You're absolutely right. Everything is mental first, right? You have to see it in order to see it so that you get to experience it, right? If you can't envision it first, and for every vision you have, a provision has already been made, right? As soon as you had the vision to get this BMW, it was already set into stone when it would come into your life experience. And there were probably trials and tribulations. There were also disciplines and decisions you had to make along the journey to arrive at the moment. But the moment was set in stone as soon as you decided. There's this Emerson quote that I really love. And the quote says, once you decide, all of the universe rearranges itself to bring you what it decided. Now, how long it takes for the universe to bring it to you is contingent upon you and who you are being at the time that you make the decision, and the influences that you undertake, the actions that you take. All of that is going to determine how long it takes for the universe to rearrange itself and to bring you what it is that you decided that you wanted. So I absolutely agree. Everything is mental before it is material.
Right. For sure. The only thing I will add to that is that, I don't believe in the universe, I believe in God. And for me is, as I'm a man of faith, I said, your Lord is your will first, not mine. And when you look at my life, if I would have been successful with my first business, which a lot of my friends were successful. So a lot of my buddies that exited college for computer science in Canada were very successful. I wasn't. I had to go through corporate, right? But if I know that if I would have gotten my desire back then, it would have been a total disaster. I would have ended up divorced because I didn't have the maturity to handle millions of dollars yet. Right. That's why the Lord took me through a 12-year journey, 2 years of failure in a first business and 10 years in corporate, to start into another 5-year failure journey until I finally I broke through, right? So my goal wasn't to sell $1 million. Darnyelle, my goal was to have a $1 million net worth.
Yes.
That's because I had the blessing to have a grandfather that was a chartered accountant. My dad was an entrepreneur. He had multiple businesses before he passed away. And what they both told me is, because you want to be an entrepreneur, make sure you take as many accounting classes as you can in college. Right. So as a result, I had a minor in college. Even though I had a major in computer science, I had a minor in college about accounting. So I knew the main difference between cash flow and profits, for example. Net profits is not cash flow, right? I also knew the difference, right?
Absolutely. And revenue, and I'm even glad that you brought up that distinction, because I hear it all the time. People who think that because their business did $1 million, it makes them a millionaire. Well, that's not entirely true, right? A millionaire is based on your assets, right? And your ability to have liquidity at and beyond the $1 million mark is what makes you a millionaire. You can have millions of dollars funnel through your business, and if you don't understand accounting and have a really strong financial management team, then those millions are going to come and go. And at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, you won't really have anything to show for it. And so it's one thing to make millions. It's something else entirely to keep millions. And a third thing to actually have millions to leave. And so recognizing that continuum for every entrepreneur is important. And I think that it often starts with making millions for a lot of people, right? If I could just make millions, that's what they say. And I actually believe that you should focus on getting to your assets being millions before you attempt to make millions in your business. I think because, again, your business is in a lot of ways a pass-through entity, right? Money is passing through, whereas the assets that you build that are millions is what creates that life sustainability, the ability to retire at the point that you decide, and the ability to create financial legacy for your loved ones. If you have a business that does millions, but your business is not worth millions, the valuation of your business is not millions, then you won't have millions to leave if you're basing everything on your ability to get your business to the $1 million mark.
That's beautiful. So well said, you know. So that's what I believed. And I was blessed enough to, after the 5-year mark, I was able to accumulate that $1 million in net worth. So I never looked at my sales. I looked at what I kept, right? What did I
Absolutely,
keep my
because you can't
EBITDA,
spend
right?
sales.
Pardon?
You can't spend sales. You can
Exactly.
only spend revenue, right? So if
Yeah.
you sell 100,000 or $1 million, but you only take in $250,000 of it,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? You don't really have $1 million. So
I was always telling my team, right? I made a lot of mistakes because sometimes I got fooled into just increasing sales at all costs. And I was always telling my team, who is better? The owner of $100 million company that is losing 2 million a year, or the owner of a $2 million company that is making $1 million a year in net profits?
the second.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, what do you think is easier? What do you think is easier?
Honestly,
The
I think
company.
it's the same, right? I believe that it takes the same energy to achieve whatever level of success you achieve. It's the same energy. It's how you're appropriating that energy. It's the number of people you have on your team. Like,
Yeah.
if you're doing all the things yourself, you're going to be tired. But if you
Mm.
have the right team and you're able to lead and effectively guide them, the energy that you're expending will produce at the same level. So I believe the energy, it's the same energy. So if the energy is the same, the goal then is to figure out how to get into the second scenario, how
Yeah.
to be the person who has a $2 million business, but nets $1 million a year, as opposed to being the person who has a $100 million business, but only nets $2 million a year.
And the real goal is, how do you get $100 million company and net $30 million a year? Now we're
Right.
talking, right?
Right. Exactly.
Now, one thing that I want to be clear for the audience is not about making gazillions of dollars that you will never spend in your lifetime. For me, if the Lord gave you the ability to create wealth, is so that at some point you are so set that you can start giving it back. And you
Absolutely.
see that in people that make something out of their life, the first thing they start doing is blessing other people. For me, this podcast is that way of giving back. My
Mm-hmm.
most valuable asset for me is my time, and the older I get, the more valuable it becomes because the more scarce it
Absolutely.
becomes. So for me, giving this time back to the world is a valuable asset that I actually provide them, right? That's why I really appreciate my guests like you, because you're taking an hour out of your day to share your knowledge for nothing, really, just out of sheer love for the audience, for the people that are willing to listen to wisdom. The
Yes.
Bible says that wisdom is better than gold and better than
Yes.
silver, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. I think that giving and for me, that comes in the form of philanthropy, tithing, and tithing money, your financial resource as well as your time, is essential. It's par for the course from the beginning. It's not even once you get there. I believe that you can delay how long it takes you to get there if you aren't benevolent, if you don't have a heart to give, if you aren't focused on giving to other people. I
Mm.
believe that the more you give away, the more comes back to you. Like it's this unwritten law and principle. Even though it is technically written, we can find it in a few different places in the Bible, sowing and reaping, right? What you sow is what you reap. And understanding the significance of even the concept of tithing that's introduced starting in Genesis and broken down in Malachi, that when you give, you allow God to open the windows of heaven to pour back into you. And so there is this reciprocal effect, and not that we do it for the getting of something back, but it's just naturally what happens when you are not the center of your own universe, right? And I do recognize the significance of the fact that God is the creator of the universe, right? I do know that there are people who want to substitute God for universe. I like you, I am a believer, and I speak God and Jesus boldly and confidently. And I also understand that God created all of these things. And when you understand how they work. I believe God is principled. And when you understand the principles and you operate in the principles, then you get the reward of the principle. And so it's incumbent upon people like us, David, to share openly what we have learned, what we know, in order to help someone else maybe avoid some of the pitfalls or the mistakes that could be made on the journey that delays their ability to experience the divine appointment of the destiny that God determined for them before they were formed in their mother's womb.
It's beautiful. So well said. I knew this podcast was going to be incredible. It's so amazing already. What do you find is that after so many years of teaching people how to reach that $1 million mark, what do you find as a common pattern of the mistakes people make in their entrepreneurial life? Is it sales? Is it marketing? Is it culture? What do you find?
You know, the tangible, tactical, strategic mistakes, they vary. But the biggest mistake that I see is not believing that they are worthy of or deserving of that kind of money. We all come in onto this earth and are introduced to money by those who raised us. And their beliefs about money become our beliefs about money. Depending upon what we were taught about money, how we were taught to refer to money, all of those things flower our worthiness and our perception of value as it pertains to money. And that is often what sets us back, right? What I say all the time, if there were 5 business owners standing in front of me, I would tell you, and let's say there are 5 $250,000 business owners. They've all gotten their business to the $250,000 mark, and they are so excited because they have multiple 6 figures. I would say that every single one of them has $1 million company. It's just not priced, packaged, and positioned correctly, because the way they see money is really about the way that they see themselves. And if I can help them to see themselves the way that God has always seen them, and to even separate, because often we are assessing or determining our value based on the service we provide, and they are not comparable. Like to understand how we came to be created, to understand the miracle of conception and birth and growing into adulthood to become an entrepreneur, if you really understood that, you would never trivialize your worth down to the price you charge for your service. There would be no way in the world you would do that, right? And so most people, that's the disconnect. They are thinking that if they charge, $300 an hour or $500 an hour, $1,000 an hour, then and someone says no, that they are somehow unworthy and they are somehow they don't deserve it, or they set their price in advance at a lower price point because they don't see what they do as being something that solves a problem for other people. That's the biggest mistake I see amongst that population of entrepreneurs and small business owners that have crossed the 6-figure mark and have defied that first statistic, right? The statistics tell us that roughly 88% of all the small businesses in the United States, and a small business is classified broadly, right? 1,500 employees or less, or $40 million in revenue or less. But the vast majority of businesses do not make $100,000 a year, right? And so for that population, that is the biggest mistake. Beyond that, not understanding marketing, looking at marketing in a way that doesn't make it simple to understand. Like I consider, and this is the way I define marketing, marketing is a conversation that you, the solution provider, has with the person who has the problem that they've been unsuccessful at solving on their own. That's marketing. And how you have that conversation is going to vary based on who the person you are trying to have a conversation with is. Sometimes that conversation is going to happen on social media. Sometimes that conversation is going to happen in door-to-door sales. Sometimes that conversation is going to happen over the phone. Sometimes that conversation is going to happen at a networking event. Sometimes that conversation is going to happen through an email. It doesn't matter the vehicle of conversation. We are just talking to a person who has a problem that we have the solution to. Mm-hmm. And how dare us, when we have the solution, keep it to ourselves. Yeah. And so if we can get people to understand that marketing is not this big, hairy, audacious monster, but it is instead as simplified as a conversation, then it becomes so much easier to have consistent conversations that lead to the interaction and the transaction for the level of transformation the person wants to experience based on the level of the problem it is that they have that needs to be solved.
Wow, it's beautiful. You know, what you do really does add a lot of value. And that's why I see the Inc. 5000 behind there. Tell me about that book. Have you actually wrote a book?
I've actually written 8 books.
8 books.
I've
Wow.
written 8 books. Move to Millions is my latest book. It's the proven framework to become $1 million CEO with grace and ease instead of hustle and grind. So we, inside of the book, we unveil our Move to Millions method, which is our proven way to help clients get to scale to and sustain $1 million company. So we look at 5 things. We look at their strategy. We look at their sales infrastructure and their ability to offer a leveraged sales system. We look at their systems and automation. We look at their support team, and we look at their success mindset. I'm actually updating the method to add a 6th pillar, which would be their spirituality. Because I do believe that businesses that have a spiritual foundation go farther faster, and connecting to the power that is higher than you and allowing that to be the force field, the energy source of everything that it is that you do. It's a natural accelerant. And I want to bridge the gap. There's this massive gap that's been created between faith and business, and we're so afraid to talk about faith and business. Even when we met for our pre-conversation, we talked about your own journey with talking about your faith openly in business circles. And I think that the world that we live in today, people need to know and have a center of faith, right? Our money in the United States says, "In God we trust." So we are not agnostic to spirituality. We were actually, this nation was created out of a thirst and a need to have freedom spiritually. That's why they left wherever the colonies were and came to the United States, because they wanted to escape some of that religious persecution and experience more freedom, right? They wanted to break free, using the name of this amazing podcast that you have, from those things that bound them and didn't allow them the space to explore their own spirituality. And so I believe that as we allow for and create space for and confidently articulate how to allow faith and business to come together again, we'll see an amazing emergence. We'll see a tremendous growth trend, and we'll see the economy truly stabilize across the world, because we're not trying to separate who we are naturally, right? I think about Genesis 1:26, which says, at the point at which man was being created, God said, "Let us make man in our image and likeness. Let us give him power and dominion over the earth, dominion over the earth and the power to subdue." That's our birthright. That's who we are. That is at the innermost part of who we are. And so allowing that to re-enter into our entrepreneurial hopes, dreams, and endeavors is only going to continue to make this world a better place and to create an environment for everyone to be able to break free.
That's beautiful. And it's impossible to separate. I have had the privilege of having a network of very wealthy entrepreneurs, very, very wealthy people. But it's sad to report that the majority of them, if they are not in their faith, they have a big hole in their heart. And let me tell you something, the biggest failure for me is becoming financially successful and still be not fulfilled spiritually.
I agree. I agree, David. That is such a failure. And I believe it happens far too often. And again, I think it goes back often to how we're raised and what we're taught about money and what we lead ourselves to believe. There are so many people who even misinterpret the scripture, right? And Timothy, "For the love of money is the root of all evil," right? And the scripture, as the Bible was translated into English, this was actually lost in translation, because what the scripture actually is referring to is avarice or extreme greed. So what it's really saying is that extreme greed is the root of all evil. And what we learn and how we see this show up in the lives of people that we know, that it amplifies who you really are, right? If you are a mean and cantankerous person, then money is only going to make you a more mean and cantankerous person. If you are a benevolent soul that has a heart for other people, money is only going to make you more benevolent, right?
Yeah.
And we also understand in that same chapter in Timothy, we get an amazing prescription of how those of us who do have money are to act and respond with money, right? Paul tells Timothy, tell them to not be arrogant or high-minded. Tell them to do good deeds and to tell them to remember the source of their wealth. Yeah. So if you're not arrogant or high-minded, if you do good with your money and you remember that God is the source that allowed you to even have that resource, you can't go wrong. And money is actually going to be something that you can utilize to change the world.
And that's a huge difference, right?
Very huge.
You start, as Jesus said, when you start feeding the hungry, clothing the naked, helping the widow and the immigrant is actually in the Bible.
Yeah.
Right? The orphans, help the orphans. Like, those are commandments directly from the Lord. But to do all that, guess what? You need money.
Absolutely. It's why God talks about money, wealth, and possessions 2,300 times in the Bible. He talked about money, wealth, and possessions more than heaven or hell, because it is important. It is something that we need. It's something we need to master. In the parable of the talents, when you learn and you become a master over money, then you can become a lord over many things, right? And so when we look at that parable and we see the two servants who went out and multiplied the money because they had confidence in themselves, the way they saw themselves and the way they saw money was confidently so that they could produce more of it, versus the servant who in fear hid the money and therefore was banished from the kingdom because he didn't understand the significance of what we are to do with money. Right? It is such a powerful tool, and it is important. It is incumbent upon us, especially those of us who are entrepreneurs and small business owners, that we understand it and we understand it fully so that we can leverage the tool that it is in a way that not only helps us to grow our businesses, but again, to shape culture, to change the lives of others, those who are not as fortunate as we happen to be, to see things that we've been privy to seeing, but should be able to experience inside of our life experience.
And all throughout scriptures, right?
All throughout scripture.
All throughout scriptures. I just remember Isaac, right? The Bible says that he got 100-fold from his investment in 1 year.
Yeah.
100-fold multiplication. If you look at corn, if you count, I think it's more than, more than 57 seeds there. And each one will produce another plant that gives 2 or 3 more of those corn seeds.
Yeah.
Those kernels, right? Like, abundance is implied in creation. Last time I read, we started to think that, 100 years ago, we thought that we had like a billion or 2 billion cells, and then they upgraded that. They keep upgrading that. The last report that I read was that we now believe that we have over 100 trillion cells in our body.
Yeah.
Just our gut biome has 2 billion cells. The number is so staggering that we don't even know what it means. That's how abundant our body is. Everything multiplies. So abundance and multiplication is implied in the creation around us. The Bible says that nobody is unjustified for not believing in God, because the creation reveals the divinity of our Creator, of the Creator. Right?
I love that. I love that. Abundance is applied. I love it. I love it.
It's implied in the creation.
Abundance is implied in creation. Oh.
Yeah. Think about it.
Just sitting with it, right? And just pausing and thinking. So when we say, or we hear someone else say, abundance is your birthright, to hear you now say abundance is implied in creation, it's another way to say that abundance is my birthright. Like, the fact that I am here is abundance. Like, and if that doesn't make you break free, right? I don't know what will. Like, the realization that you yourself are abundance, active, tense, present, right here, right now. You are abundance. I have chills all over my body, David, because an individual's ability to understand, connect, and align to that belief is the key to their experiencing the fullness for which Christ was sent, right? Like, recognize, regardless of what you see, because it is potentially going to take a measure of faith, right? And it doesn't have to be a lot of faith. I keep these mustard seeds right here in front of my desk. It doesn't even have to be a lot of faith, just a mustard seed of faith.
Yeah.
Right? To understand that no matter what you might be experiencing right now, you are abundance. And returning to the alignment, to the natural state and realization that you are abundance is the key to unlocking it for you. That is so powerful.
Beautiful. You know, I have come to realize, it took me over 50 years to realize that our mind listens to three voices: your own voice, the voice of the enemy, and the voice of God. And when you realize who do you need to pay attention to, that's when you unlock all these problems. That's when you break free. That's when you break through into the next level. Because if you really listen to the voice of God, and that's why you need Bible. You need to get into scriptures, because that's how you listen to God. If you listen to your own voice, you're going to be, maybe I don't deserve it. If you listen to the enemy, all you're going to get is negative stuff. And even if the enemy entices you to get more money, he will do it in a corrupted way and for horrible purposes, for the pleasures of the flesh. But if you listen to the Lord and the way he wants abundance in your life to bless other people, starting with yourself and your family, that's all you got to do. Listen to the right voice. Because everything is in the mind. And I love when you say, like, you know, like your mindset, like you have to believe you can become a millionaire entrepreneur first. You have to become that first before it materializes. And that's, I go back to this. Who are you going to listen to? And it's so important because it's all here. Right?
So good.
You know, time has passed by so fast, and I really want to, appreciate and respect your time. I'm going to ask you one last question before I close the podcast.
Okay.
If you had access to a billboard in front of the busiest highway on earth, what would you write in it?
Oh, I love that question. I would write, I have like three things that I'd write, but I'm going to only pick one. I would write.
I'm going to give you 3 billboards. Go in order for priority.
I could do 3 billboards. Okay. So the first one would say, see yourself the way that God sees you. That would be the first one. The second one would say, millions are your birthright, and to access them, you need only move. And the third one would say, if you did not come from millions, millions should come from you.
Wow. That's beautiful. If people were to listen to that, just the first billboard. If you really see yourself as God sees you, he is the creator of all, the visible and the invisible. And if it wasn't for him, you will not be in your mother's womb, would not be here still.
Absolutely.
The odds for you to be here, even statistically, is 1 in a trillion. It's ridiculous when you try to figure it out. And he sees you perfected already. He sees you as he sees Jesus Christ. He actually became human to show us that you could live a perfect life if you really are ought to. And so that perfection, that's the way he sees us, as a complete, perfect creation, because we are made to his image, right? Like you just said, this gives me shivers. Like he made us to his image. That's how he sees us.
Absolutely.
Amen.
This was so good.
Dr. Darnyelle, if people would like to get in touch with you, hire your company to break that $1 million mark, how can they find you?
You go to movetomillions.com. everything you need to find me and my team will be there. MoveToMillions.com.
And your book, where can they find it?
If you go to MoveToMillions.com, there'll be a link that'll take you to how to get the book.
Fantastic. MoveToMillions.com. That shows that you're an amazing teacher of entrepreneurship, because there is one website and one way to get it. Simple. Keep it simple, right?
That's right.
Thank you so much. God bless you, and have a beautiful rest of the day.
You too. Take care.
Bye-bye.
That's all for today's episode of the Break Free Podcast. Head on over to iTunes and subscribe to the show. Starting your own business can be tough, but it doesn't have to be. Visit davidmansilla.com to pick up a copy of the #1 international best-selling book, Breaking Out of Corporate Jail. Expand what you consider to be possible and reach your full potential. And join us on the next episode.